You guys all ready to start? I know this is probably what you were watching on the screen was more exciting than what we're going to do here, but we've got to do this hearing. My name is Jose Herrera. I'm the co-vice chair of the commission. We have other commissioners that are probably watching this presentation via the web. We have Commissioner Sturts, who couldn't be here today, Commissioner Freeman, Commissioner McNulty, and also the chair, Mathis, who couldn't be here today. So welcome to South Mountain. This is, I think we're having a total of 30 public hearings on this second round. And tomorrow will be in, I think, Cottonwood and Peoria. So for those of you that can't get enough tonight and want some more input, you have raise the voice. I'm good. So there's, again, Cottonwood and Peoria. So before we start, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. I am so sorry. 6:12 p.m. is the start time of the meeting. Thank you, Marty. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So let me introduce some really important people in the room. We have our Deputy Executive Director, Christina Gomez, back in the back. We have our Chief Technology Officer, Buck Forst. We have our Public Information Officer, Stu Robinson. We have our Community Outreach Representatives, both Lisa Schmeling and Christy Olson. Legal Counsel is Joe Canfield. Strategic Utility Representative Willie Desmond. We have Marty Herder, who's recording. And I think that is it. We also have our interpreter, Carlos Reyes. We're by federal law, we're required to provide interpretation services. So Carlos, if you don't mind stepping up and talk about your services.
Good evening, Vice Chair, Commissioners, ladies and gentlemen. In accordance with the Voting Rights Act, a translator and interpreter will be available at the public hearings in order to provide interpreting services that might be needed for those citizens that need translating or interpreting services. Please contact the interpreter present at this meeting so that he or she can assist you. And now I will read the same script in Spanish. Vicepresidente Herrera, comisionados, damas y caballeros, de acuerdo a la ley de los derechos electorales, un intérprete estará disponible en todas las reuniones de audiencia pública a fin de proporcionar la interpretación que pueda ser necesaria para los ciudadanos que necesiten servicios de interpretación o traducción. Si necesita la asistencia de un intérprete, por favor, comuníquese conmigo. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. We'll do next, it will be Mr. Desmond talking about the second round public hearings and just some background information that you will find useful. And again, if you're planning on speaking, make sure that you filled out this yellow form. There's a blue form if you choose not to speak but still want to provide comments to the commission.
Allowing me to be here today. My name is Willie Desmond. I work with Strategic Telemetry. We're the firm hired to provide technical assistance to the Commission for the mapping part of the process. Tonight I'm going to be talking just a little bit about the draft maps that are currently under a 30-day review period and the development of those maps. Again, the goal of these meetings is to hear your comments about the draft maps. So thank you all very much for being here today. We do look forward to hearing what you have to say. Before getting to the maps, though, I do want to just give a little bit more of a quick background on both the redistricting process and how these maps were developed. All right, Arizona's redistricting process is governed by the state constitution, which was amended in year 2000 with the passage of Proposition 106. It stipulates that Arizona's Independent Redistricting Commission redraw Arizona's congressional and legislative districts to reflect the results of the most recent census. The most recent census occurred in 2010, and following the census, Arizona was allocated an additional congressional district. Aside from the need to redraw because of this additional congressional district, there's also been shifts in population, there's been growth in population and shrinkage. So this process is developed to ensure that all districts meet the constitutional criteria. Those constitutional criteria, as outlined by Proposition 106, are that all districts must comply with the U.S. Constitution and the Voting Rights Act. They must have equal population. These first two criteria are federally mandated, and all plans that take effect anywhere in the country must meet these two requirements. Additionally, Proposition 106 outlines 4 other criteria. They are that districts must be compact and contiguous to the extent practicable, respect communities of interest to the respect practicable. They must use visible geographic features such as cities, towns, county boundaries, and undivided census tracts when possible. And you must favor competitive districts where there is no significant detriment to the other goals. All right, just to expound a little bit more on the Voting Rights Act, Arizona's congressional and legislative districts must receive preclearance or approval from the Department of Justice or a federal court under Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act before they can take effect. To get preclearance, Arizona must demonstrate that the new districts do not discriminate against minority voters in purpose or effect, which means there can be no intentional or accidental discrimination. Under Section 5, Arizona's redistricting plans cannot be retrogressive. The plans cannot weaken or reduce more minority voters' rights. And the presence of discrimination can be determined by analyzing population data and election results. Okay, the overall timeline for the redistricting process can be broken down into a couple different steps or phases. The first step is establishing the commission itself. Earlier this year, the commission was appointed following a thorough screening process to serve in a voluntary role for the state of Arizona. Currently, as far as I know, the commission is comprised of five members: Vice Chairman Scott Freeman, Vice Chairman Jose Herrera, who's here this evening, Chairwoman Colleen Mathis, and Commissioners Linda McNulty and Richard Sturtz. Following the creation of the commission, we then go into the first round of public hearings. Before drawing a single line this year, the commission held 23 public meetings all around the state throughout July and August to get input from members of the public about issues relevant to the redistricting process, such as geography, communities of interest, minority voting rights, and competitiveness. Once those first round of hearings were completed, the actual mapping began. Per Proposition 106, we have to start with a clean slate here in Arizona. The state is then divided into equal size population districts in a grid-like pattern. And the grid maps were approved on August 18th. I'll talk a little bit more about them in a minute, but you should know that these grid-like patterns only meet 2 of the constitutional criteria. They're compact and they are equal population. Since adopting these grid maps, the commission then has met more than 25 times to consider adjustments to those grid maps to accommodate all of the other 6 criteria. During this time, they also received a lot more public input from members of the public, and groups submitted input. We received maps, lots of testimony. And so this public comment has been continually going on throughout the process. After the grid maps are finished being adjusted, we then come to the draft maps, which is where we are today. So on October 3rd, the commission approved a congressional draft map that incorporated changes based on all of the constitutional criteria. It approved a draft legislative map then on October 10th. Following the actual mapping, we then do what's happening right now, a second round of public hearings. So we're currently visiting, I believe it's now 29 cities and towns to talk about these draft maps. I know it says 25, and receive additional public input about what people think of them. Following the end of the second round of public hearings, we'll then move on to completion of the maps and development of final maps. Once the maps are adjusted, they will go to the Department of Justice for preclearance. And again, because Arizona is subject to Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, the district maps must be approved by a federal Department of Justice or the federal court in Washington, D.C. before they can be used in Arizona elections. Okay, now just to talk a little bit about the development of the maps. As you see here, this is the current congressional map. This was used in 2010, was retired after that election. This is one of the maps that we're working right now to replace. Again, per Proposition 106, we started with a completely blank slate. So we did not pay attention to where incumbents live or the previous districts. The first step is to develop a grid map that again has equal population and a compact grid-like pattern. The commission asked that 2 grid maps for both the legislative and congressional districts be developed and that they just pick one. They settled on option 2 of the congressional and option 2 of the legislative grid maps, and that happened back in August. So following that, these grid maps are then adjusted to come up with the final draft map. Again, there was over 25 meetings to develop these draft maps. Some of the highlights include 2 predominantly rural districts, 3 border districts, 3 districts in the greater Tucson region, 5 districts that are entirely in Maricopa County. It avoids splitting Arizona's Indian reservations, and there are 2 districts where minority voters have the opportunity to elect a candidate of their choice. Now going on to the legislative draft maps. Again, here is the current draft map that will be retired. It was last used in 2010. Again, we started with a blank slate. This is the grid map that was adopted by the commission. And then that was adjusted to eventually come up with this draft map. And just some of the highlights here. The old map had some wild population deviation between the districts. The least populated districts had about 155,000 people in them. The most populated districts had about 378,000 people in them. So some districts had twice as many people as others. The current draft has a deviation from about 207,000 to about 215,000. Again, to comply with the Voting Rights Act, the plan includes 10 districts where minority voters should have the opportunity to elect a candidate of their choice. And again, the map includes 3 districts wholly within Pima County, 3 districts that go primarily in southern Arizona, 17 districts primarily in Maricopa County, and 9 districts that are primarily rural. So as we do continue this process, we very much so want your input. We're interested in what you have to say. Again, thank you for being here. This is a great way to submit your input. You can fill out one of the yellow forms and speak today. You're allowed to speak on anything that you feel passionate about, but you can talk about the constitutional criteria, the draft congressional maps, or the draft legislative maps. Aside from speaking at a hearing, you can also fill out one of the blue forms and turn it in. Your comments are recorded. They go onto the record. They are considered by the commission. Additionally, you can fill out an input form on our website, or you can call our office at 602-542-5221, or toll free at 855-733-7478. And again, if you do visit the website, there are a few things I'd like to highlight for you. These red arrows point out some sections you may be interested in. If you click on the Meetings tab, you can go see information about upcoming meetings, both locations and times. You can also go back and read the transcripts or watch the videos of any of the previous meetings. So if you're curious about how these maps were developed and you want to go back and watch some of those 25 meetings that took place to do it, you can go back. That's all available on the website. Additionally, there's a public input form if you'd like to comment on the maps. And probably most importantly, if you just want to look at the maps, there's 2 different ways of doing that. Clicking on the Maps tab or on the bottom on the draft maps takes you to a page that looks very much like this. The maps are available in several formats: JPEG, PDF, Google Earth files. There's also reports on the population and different sort of mapping files if you have your own software that you'd like to load up the information. One thing I would like to highlight again is the Google Maps section. By clicking on the Google Maps section, you're taken to the Google Maps web page. Lets you see the map, lets you zoom in and zoom out just like you would on any other Google map. You can get down to the individual house level. You can follow the streets that comprise the borders. By clicking on the buttons on the left, you can turn the shading on or off, or the county lines on or off. And it's a great tool for you to learn more about these maps. Yeah, there's just a screen grab of zooming in. I believe this is in Maricopa County, but you can drill down much further than this if you're interested. So again, thank you all for being here tonight. Encourage you to visit our website at www.azredistricting.org. And there you can draw your own maps. You can watch the current meetings or the past meetings, and you can get updates on future meetings. If you'd like to stay connected with us, you can follow us on Twitter at #AIRC or friend us on Facebook. So again, thank you all very much for being here today. If you have any questions, please feel free to approach me. I'd be more than happy to try to answer any questions you have, or the staff also. So thank you again, and we very much so look forward to hearing your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Desmond. The purpose for tonight's hearing is to hear from the public and the changes that you would like for us to make on the both congressional and or legislative maps. And when you make recommendations, just give us as specific information as possible. You will have, each speaker will have 4 minutes. Now again, you would have to have filled out this form. And we'll have Buck Force taking time. Is that correct, Buck? He can't hear me. But it will be 4 minutes, and we'll be timing it. So just what we want to do is maximize the public comment. So make sure you, I think 4 minutes is more than enough. So just speak clearly. You'll have Marty recording the information, and Marty would like for you to spell your first name and last name. Speak clearly. 4 minutes doesn't go by that quickly. You can take your time. 4 minutes is a long time. And that's about it. Just be respectful of people's comments. You may or may disagree or agree with people that are speaking, but let's listen to everyone speaking, and these are their opinions, and we appreciate them. And thank you for being here tonight. You could have easily been home eating the Halloween candy, but you chose to be here with us, so thank you. The first speaker will be CJ. If I mispronounced your name, I do apologize, but CJ Briggle, B-R-I-G-G-L-E.
And you pronounced that correctly. Can you hear me?
Yes.
CJ Briggle, B-R-I-G-G-L-E. This is the 4th time I'm speaking in front of this commission. I've been here more often than that. I've been following it from the beginning. And I have previously had script in order to read, but tonight I come because I am impassioned about a process that is occurring outside of this office. And I am so angry that I needed to tell the commission what a great job they've been doing, that the honor and integrity of this commission should be upheld, and the legislation that is being enacted at this point in time as I'm speaking is beyond outrageous. Thank you for all of your wonderful, integrous input that you've done and all of the hard work you've put into this. I just cannot believe that my voice is not being heard and that Prop 106 will not be followed in any kind of manner. My constitutional rights have just been impugned, and I am very angry about that. Not at the commission, at our legislature. This is exactly why we enacted Prop 106. And thank you for letting me say that.
Thank you, ma'am. Our second speaker is Mel Hanna, Chairman of the African American Legislative and Leadership and Legislative Council. African American Leadership and Legislative Council. So yeah, also when you come up, in addition to spelling your first and last name, just tell us where you're from and who you're representing, if you're representing someone other than yourself.
Good evening. My name is Mel Hanna. I am the chairman of the African American Leadership and Legislative Council, a body of folks that's been in existence here in the Valley for about 10 years. So I'm representing that body. I'm also an active member of District 20 in Ahwatukee, and would quickly echo the comments made by the first speaker in terms of being somewhat outraged at how our voter-driven initiative and process that was enacted in 2000 is now, for the very reason to take it out of partisan politics, is now being held ransom to go back into partisan politics. And we know that it's going to be political. That's the nature of this beast. But the process that the voters thought was appropriate, it just seems, again, very un-American almost, to, in the middle of this game, to not only move the goalposts, but even change the stripes and bring the sidelines in. That being said, looking at the legislative districts, I do want to, as before, support the minority coalition of state representatives in terms of the boundaries that they were suggesting. Those particular boundaries did and do still endorse communities of interest in South Phoenix, particularly Sabine and Guadalupe and South Phoenix. Also, we wanted, and it maintains a minority majority districts at obviously is important and fits the criteria for the Voter Rights Act of 1965. Certainly, if the commission is open to tweaking that particular proposal, a couple of suggestions could be to perhaps move the western boundary out to 35th to 54th Avenue, maybe not go as far north to McDowell as it currently might do, and perhaps pick up a little bit more of south of baseline. So thank you for your comments, and again, I want to commend the commission for a very difficult job and a decent job you've done. Just in closing, certainly the media has indicated that, quote, both parties are perhaps not satisfied with what's occurred to date in terms of the boundaries. I would say to you that because both parties are in fact not satisfied, that probably indicates you're doing something good. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We next have A.J. LaFaro, chairman of the LD 17 Republicans.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman
Evening.
and members of the committee. My name is LaFaro, A.J. LaFaro, and I'm the chairman of the Legislative District 17 Republicans. But I'm not in that capacity this evening. I am representing the chairman of the Arizona State Republican Party, Mr. Thomas P. Morrissey. And with your permission, sir, I would like to read this resolution and letter into the record.
Sir, can you spell your last name your first and last name for the record?
Last name is capital L-A, capital F-A-R-O. First name is A.J. October the 29th, 2011, a resolution of the Executive Committee of the Arizona State Republican Party, State of Arizona, strongly condemning the actions of the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission, AIRC. Whereas the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission has knowingly violated its responsibilities for redistricting under federal and Arizona law, including but not limited to the 14th and 15th Amendments to the United States Constitution, the Voting Rights Act, 42 U.S.C.A. 1973, and Article 4 of the Arizona Constitution. And whereas the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission has failed to demonstrate a sincere commitment to performing its responsibilities in an honest, independent, and impartial fashion, and to upholding public confidence in the integrity of the redistricting process, and whereas the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission has knowingly violated its responsibilities for conducting open meeting laws to the public under law, including but not limited to Title 38 of the Arizona Revised Statutes. And finally, whereas the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission has knowingly violated its procurement responsibilities to the public under Arizona law, including but not limited to Title 41 of the Arizona Revised Statutes. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Executive Committee of the Arizona State Republican Party, State of Arizona, strongly condemns the partisan actions of the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission, and recommends the following. Item 1, that Governor Jan Brewer, State of Arizona, remove the 5 members of the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission in accordance with Article 4 of the Arizona Constitution. Item 2, that Attorney General Tom Horn, State of Arizona, aggressively continue his criminal investigation and civil litigation against the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission. Item 3, that the majority leadership of the Senate and House of Representatives, State of Arizona, make written redistricting recommendations to the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission in accordance with Article 4 of the Arizona Constitution that are in the best interest of the State of Arizona, not the Commission's favored special interest groups, recommendations that eliminate the wholesale gerrymandering of Arizona and hijacking of the voters' constitutional and democratic rights guaranteed under both the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment and the Voting Rights Act. Cover letter dated October the 31st, 2011 to the Honorable Janice K. Brewer, the Honorable Tom Horn, the Honorable Russell Pierce, and the Honorable Andy Tobin, with a carbon copy to Maricopa County Attorney Bill Montgomery. Dear Governor Brewer, Attorney General Horn, Senate President Pierce, and Speaker of the House Tobin, I'm writing you on behalf of Republicans throughout the state of Arizona, over 1,138,000 strong. The Arizona State Republican Party Executive Committee unanimously passed the attached resolution at their statewide executive committee meeting held on October the 29th, 2011. The resolution represents in part a grassroots effort started by Republicans in Arizona's Legislative District 17 back in early October when they unanimously passed the original resolution strongly condemning the actions of the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission. Even though all of the original resolution's requested action items are now being addressed, the Arizona State Republican Party Executive Committee felt it important to show solidarity and statewide support for all of your efforts to protect the voters' constitutional and democratic rights. We have witnessed one egregious act after another by the ARRC, which has failed to demonstrate.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Ma'am, it's okay. You can submit that.
And can I submit a copy for the
You can
record?
submit a copy for the record. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Well, thank you. Next, we have Tony Sissons. And again, if you guys can stick to the 4-minute time limit, that'd be great.
Thank you, Commissioner Herrera. My name is Tony Sissons, T-O-N-Y-S-I-S-S-O-N-S. My continuing concern is that partisan forces have been very effective at convincing everyone that very few competitive districts are possible. The Commission gets to decide how many. That was made clear by the Arizona Supreme Court. But I personally want you to know that many more competitive districts are possible than the political parties would have you believe. A couple of weeks ago, Steve Moratori of the Arizona Egalitarian called me one day and asked me for some evidence to back up my assertion that as many as 12 competitive districts were possible on a plan that would also comply with the Voting Rights Act. I prepared for him a map showing a wide expanse of Maricopa County that was heavily dominated by Republicans, in which competitive districts could not be drawn because everywhere you look to find Democrats to balance that registration and achieve competitiveness, you just find more Republicans. I contend that just as the voting rights compliance creates many non-competitive Democratic districts, the almost as many heavily Republican districts counterbalance them, leaving about half the state with almost an even ratio of Republicans and Democrats. In that remainder area, at least 12 competitive districts could be drawn. I understand that Mr. Moratori presented that map to you at an earlier meeting. That's kind of a theoretical look at the situation. And I just want to quickly give you a real on-the-ground illustration from the last decade. In 2004, the city of Flagstaff hired me to draw a legislative plan for the city to submit to the commission. City leaders wanted a different treatment of northern Arizona than they saw in most of the commission's published plans. I was asked to merge one particular commission plan that had a Northland treatment that Flagstaff liked with an IRC test plan called the Hall-Minkoff plan. I was instructed not to make any changes to the IRC's 10 voting rights districts, nor any changes to districts south of the Phoenix metro area. I was also charged with making as many competitive districts as I could while minimizing the number of districts that I changed. Following those instructions, I created a 9 competitive district map. Flagstaff's mayor presented the plan. The legal counsel, the IRC's legal counsel at the time, promptly declared that the IRC could not consider Flagstaff's plan because it had not been presented at multiple hearings statewide, which I think was a very ridiculous thing to say. Later, from personal curiosity, I looked at the IRC-drawn legislative districts in southern Arizona. I adjusted a short section of the boundary between districts 28 and 30 and created the 10th and 11th competitive districts. Details of that plan are on a handout that I will give to your staff. Think about it, 10 voting rights districts and 11 competitive districts all on the same map at the same time. And I only made changes to 10 districts. And this was all while the prior IRC and its attorneys and consultants were saying that only 3 or 4 competitive districts were possible because voting right districts use up so many Democrats that, well, you know the refrain because you've been hearing that song this decade also. The political parties are currently telling you what they think of the draft plans. Partisans will not be satisfied no matter what. Even an advantaged party will complain that it doesn't have the amount of advantage that it thought it was somehow entitled. Please honor your real constituency, the voters of Arizona. Thank you.
Just a reminder that I guess the 4 minutes do go by pretty quickly. So if you will be reading, read as quickly as possible. And Mr. Assistant, if you want to leave that for the record. Oh, if you can give that to Buck and this one as well. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Our next speaker is a former state representative from District 16, Mr. Campbell. And again, please don't forget to spell your first and last name for the record.
Good evening. First of all, I want to thank you all, the commissioners, Chairwoman Colleen Mathis, Commissioner Herrera, Freeman, McNulty, and Stutz for taking the time to do this. I know it takes a lot of energy, a lot of time, and people don't appreciate the amount of things you put into it and the amount of time you take away from your family to do such things. And I just want to briefly say that understanding the process, understanding what's going on, nobody's going to be satisfied. We understand that. But the job that you've done and the time that you've taken to do this is commendable, and I appreciate it. I want to let you know that we look forward to having these programs. We appreciate the opportunity to come and talk about this. This is the first time that we ever had this much input from citizens when we talk about this project and this process, and to understand that people really take time to come and listen to you and understand the program that you're doing is commendable. So my first point is to say thank you. We really appreciate what you're doing. Secondly, I want to say that understanding that no good piece of legislation, everybody's always satisfied. So that means you're definitely doing something right here, and that you continue to do what you're doing. There are some things that we're not happy with. We understand that we could have more people over in one place and less over in another, or we would like to have districts work exactly the way we want to see them work. But that isn't always the case. And as Arizona continues to grow and we become a more diverse population, we're going to see more people out here, more people get involved. And it's good to see that you all are bringing this to the community, making sure that we have an opportunity to get involved in the process, and taking back every comment that people have, good, bad, indifferent. No matter what it is, you're still taking the time to listen to our comments. And I just want to say we appreciate your work, not only representing my District 16, but also representing the Arizona African American Democratic Caucus. We want to make sure that we can do anything to assist you, and we appreciate your time and your efforts. Thank you.
Mr. Campbell. Next speaker is Jeffrey Tucker, representing himself.
Hi there, my name is Jeffrey Tucker, Jeffrey, Tucker, Tucker. Thank you for the opportunity to present another letter to the Commission. In my October 18th letter, I showed that there was a problem with competition in the maps. It did not give concrete solutions or guidelines as to the methods that the Commission could use to reasonably satisfy that they have drawn a competitive Arizona map. In this letter, I offer two criteria when used together that the Commission could use to measure and benchmark their success. Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry.
Could you repeat that?
Oh, sure thing. In this letter, I offer two criteria when used together that the Commission could use to measure and benchmark their success. Criteria 1, the Commission shall have achieved a fair representation of voters and shall have created a reasonable minimum level of competition in Arizona when the percentage of competitive districts equals or exceeds the percentage of statewide independent voters. For Arizona as it stands today, this would mean having at least 1/3 of all proposed districts be drawn competitively. This is due to the fact that 1/3 of the state's voters are independent voters. Criterion 2, the Commission shall have achieved a fair and competitive statewide balance of safe partisan districts when the distribution of safe partisan districts is approximately equal to the respective balance of the statewide partisan voters. For Arizona as it stands today, this would mean having an approximate 47% to 53% balance of safe Democratic proposed districts to safe Republican districts. This is derived from the fact that there are 1 million Democratic voters as compared to 1.14 million Republican voters, representing a 47-53 47-53 ratio. Looking at the congressional map under these criteria, the Commission has achieved an adequate number of competitive districts, which is 3 in this case. However, when it comes to safe partisan districts, the congressional map fails because the current proposal provides Republicans with an uncompetitive, overwhelming 2-to-1 advantage rather than an approximate 47-53 balance of safe partisan districts that would sufficiently represent the statewide electorate. Looking at the legislative map under these same criteria, the situation is worse, as the map drawn does not meet either criterion. By definition, the Commission should strive to draw at least 10 competitive legislative districts, where currently it is only drawn 4. Regarding the balance of safe partisan districts, the view is consistent with the congressional map. The current proposal gives Republicans an uncompetitive, overwhelming 2-to-1 advantage instead of an approximate 47-53 balance of safe partisan districts that would sufficiently represent the statewide electorate. I conclude that it is very distressing that a slim plurality of this state's voters should receive the lion's share of representation, as they do under the existing maps. Again, I implore that the Commission revise its maps to create greater competition and to truly represent Arizona in its work. Please further examine where communities of interest have been packed into districts, and in those districts where competition has been proposed and achieved, to find ways of making that competition even stronger. Thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Dr. Janie Heydrich, representing herself.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Janie Heydrich, Janie Hydrick. I've been a Chandler resident for 35 years, and I'm speaking as an individual. Please know that the most vitriolic voices are neither the majority nor the ones which should deter you from the courageous path you as a commission have chosen to follow. Your perseverance alone could shepherd Arizona into a politically active future that can be fair, equitable, and truly reflective of its population, not simply a small group who are mean-spirited, self-serving, and determined to preserve their own political positions regardless of the will of the people. The will of the people is that each of us may have the opportunity to have a voice in all levels of government. The will of the people is that our state be as bipartisan and politically competitive as possible. My remarks tonight will address the draft Congressional District 9 map and the and the draft Legislative District 18 map, both of which include my home in Chandler. First, let me address the CD9 map. Our congressional district has been evolving. Its residents no longer overwhelmingly reflect the unbending, predictable ideology of a single party. Independents and the voters of both major parties must be able to elect people who reflect the increasingly moderate views of my community as a whole. Making the new CD9 more competitive will really reflect the moderate streak of our community, and I thank you for doing that. Next, I'll address the draft LD18 map. As with our larger congressional district, our legislative district community has shown a clear tendency to support candidates from both parties. Thank you for enhancing the competitiveness of our legislative district. For the first time in many years, and for the first time in too many election cycles, we feel there's finally the opportunity to be represented rather than being disenfranchised by the political system. However, there are a couple of tweaks that would render two adjoining LDs, LD18 and LD26, even more competitive. Baseline Road is the proposed divider between LD18 and LD26. By moving that divider north to Route 60 and by pulling the eastern border back west to Dobson, both LD18 and LD26 would be virtually 50-50. In closing, as a career educator and parent of 4 children who attended Kyrene Elementary and middle schools and graduated from Corona del Sol High School, I want to address the overlays of the Kyrene School District and the Tempe Union High School District. With the current drafts, Kyrene essentially matches the boundary of LD18, and Tempe Union High School District fits right inside of CD9. The lifelong friendships and the intense community engagement that our children garnered from their years in the Kyrene and Tempe Union High School districts should be hallmarks of every community. With a truly competitive legislative district and a truly competitive congressional district, our community will finally have an opportunity to impact education policy and education funding. The benefits to our communities and our states can make the difference between a well-educated workforce that can take its place in an American and global economy and a poorly educated workforce that cannot. Thank you and the Commission for conducting these public hearings, and thank you for the great investment of your integrity and hard work. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am. Next speaker is Kevin Kopp, COPP, representing himself.
Hi, it's Kevin Kopp, Kevin Kopp. I'm here representing myself. I've never been here before, so I've written my notes out in text for you. I come speaking to you as a football coach, Little League football coach, Little League baseball coach, a small business owner, and specifically about the Congressional District 3. My wife and I live in the Phoenix neighborhood of Arcadia. I work closely to Desert Ridge, and my wife works just south of Desert Ridge off Tatum. Living in Arcadia, we find a lot in common with our friends and neighbors and many close and strong connections to the neighboring communities of Paradise Valley, the Biltmore, and Northeast Phoenix. We pay close attention to City of Phoenix zoning issues that impact these areas, as well as issues that impact the town of Paradise Valley, since it is surrounded entirely on three sides by the City of Phoenix. The arterial streets that link these areas together include Camelback Road, with the prominent business and retail presence along the Camelback corridor, Lincoln Drive, which directly links Paradise Valley to the Biltmore area, and Tatum Boulevard, which links the Arcadia area and Paradise Valley with Northeast Phoenix and the North Valley. This section of the valley is strongly linked through the long-established small businesses that serve this area, the longtime residents, concern for zoning and quality of life issues, school and youth activities, and our overall strong sense of community. All of these communities of interest are west of Scottsdale Road. We were shocked that your proposed congressional draft maps split these communities in half, pulling Arcadia and the Biltmore away from the section of the valley they identify with and placing them in a district with Tempe and Chandler doesn't make sense. I've discussed this with many neighbors and community leaders who disagree with your draft maps, including the chairman of the Arcadia Chamber of Commerce, who opposes throwing Arcadia into a district with East Valley cities such as Tempe. I've even heard the mayor of Tempe, on behalf of his constituents, point out that the competing and conflicting interests between East Valley cities such as Tempe and this section of Phoenix are compelling reasons not to have them in the same congressional district. It is clear that you are trying to place communities together that do not want to be together. Please reconfigure the draft congressional maps to respect communities of interest by keeping Arcadia and the Biltmore linked to Paradise Valley, Northeast Phoenix, and the North Valley. These communities are a natural fit and should not be split. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, sir. You want to submit that for the public record? You can give that to Buck Forst. The next speaker is Marcia Bushing.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the Commission. My name is Marcia Bushing. It's spelled M-A-R-C-I-A-B-U-S-C-H-I-N-G. I am here representing myself. As many of you know, I was a finalist to be chosen for the Redistricting Commission and have attended or watched numerous, if not most, of the Commission hearings. But most importantly, I received an honorable mention in drafting maps for the competitive contest, and so I know from firsthand experience how difficult your job is. On following the work of the Commission, I have realized and salute you for the great work you've done as a public servant with the very, very long hours you've spent. the unpaid time that you're putting in, and each of you have tried very hard to do the best job possible. I really, really, really appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. Overall, I think that you have done a good job on the maps. You've balanced the criteria, and you've certainly improved competitiveness over what was in existence 10 years ago. But moving specifically to the area that we're currently located in and is close to my heart and my residents, proposed legislative district 27, I want to say that you've granted it the dubious distinction of having the greatest compliance of any district with the Voting Rights Act, while at the same time having it be the least competitive district of any of the 30 districts. It has, as proposed, the highest percent of Democrat voters and the lowest percent of non-Hispanic white voters. It has the lowest percentage of non-Hispanic voting age population, and it has double the African American population of any other district. So despite trying to make everything more competitive, this proposed LD 27 actually has, as I indicated, the dubious distinction of being the least competitive of any district, proposed district in the state. Certainly, if it weren't so late in the process, I would recommend changes to it to make it more competitive. And one of the things that I think should be done is moving the Winston precinct out of proposed LD 27 into either of the two adjoining districts. However, now I think it's more important for the commission to get the maps passed and submitted to the Department of Justice and move on with the process. There's way too many people that are waiting out there to find out what the final maps will be to be making any major changes at this point. So with that, I thank you for your service. I really appreciate it, and on behalf of all the Arizona citizens, thank you.
Next speaker is Lisa Blackhorse.
Kind of short, so hopefully you can hear me. Independent Redistricting Commission, my name is Lisa Blackhorse, B-L-A-C-K-H-O-R-S-E, just like a horse, but it's black. I am a Phoenix resident for over the last 10 years. I am representing myself as a Native American mother. I have a great interest of voting rights in our communities. The American Indian Citizenship Act was not passed until 1924. In Arizona, Native Americans were not even allowed to vote to 1948, so I do have a lot of interest in the Voting Rights Act, as you have spoken. Having this commission has been an important process. This process is going to make our state a better state, and one of my passions is a lot of people I know, as in this room, a lot of people are trying to survive. So having this commission has been an important process because not everyone's voice can be heard. And so I do want to thank the people that took the time tonight to come speak before this commission, because this is an opportunity to give back to the people of Arizona, this commission, and have our voices heard. I want to thank you again for this opportunity to speak, and I hope that this will continue to be an open and fair process, because I think we owe it to the people of Arizona. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is Michael Williams.
Mr. Commissioner, and the rest of the activists here in Arizona. My name is Michael Williams, and I live in District 20, which is soon to be District 18. I'd like to go on record in support of the Redistricting Commission. What is happening now is reminiscent of an old saying that was displayed on T-shirts back in the 90s. That said, just as I was beginning to win the rat race, along came faster rats. The move to remove commissioners is a fast one, geared to stop change. And District 20 has long been dominated by a single party, but that's starting to change. Personally, I would have preferred seeing the new District 18 include Guadalupe rather than going east as proposed. But we've selected individuals to serve on this commission and should let them do the job. You do not change the rules of a race simply from fear that you might lose it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You next have, I think it's Representative, not, well, actually Senator Leah Landrum Taylor. So, representing herself and the Minority Commission.
Thank you to the commissioners and to the visitors that are here this evening. First of all, I want to say I'm sorry for being a little bit late here this evening, but we were stuck at the Capitol during this special session that just occurred. I do want to say I truly do thank the commission for the hard work. I realize that this is a purely volunteer gig that you all have here, and it's not an easy one that you're doing. But we certainly appreciate that. Is everybody going to be happy with the maps and the lines and the way that there are? I doubt it. But at the same time, what this is it gives us an opportunity to come forward and to be able, at this point, to recognize what the voters of this state put forth 11 years ago in Proposition 106. And that was to have a fair, independent redistricting committee, and to be able to take out all of the politics that were involved with this. We now have this opportunity to come forward and to be able to voice our concerns. I wanted to make sure that the session and the floor ended because I come as a citizen that lives here in this community. And the maps that we have, I guess, the proposed map that's coming forward with the proposed District 27, I believe it was up on the board a little earlier today. The Minority Coalition has worked really hard on three of these districts here throughout our state. And the ones that we've been concerned about is we want to make sure, number one, that the districts go forward and pass the Department of Justice and the necessity of making sure that we do have minority districts here so that we can have an opportunity for minorities to be able to run and to be able to win and to be able to serve Arizona and offer the diversification that's necessary for that. I know that several people have spoke tonight, so I don't want to carry on and on and on, and some of the proposals that the folks in my district have asked me to bring forward as it relates to that proposed 27, and that's to take a look at the area from 44th Street to 24th Street, from Van Buren to McDowell, and to be able to add back the community of interest from Southern to Lower Buckeye, from 35th Avenue to 51st Avenue. These are some of the concerns that were brought to my attention, but overall, there was a map that the Minority Coalition came forward with right in this very room a little bit ago when the commissioners came to hear from the community, and that was the map that the community supported, but in realizing there would always be changes as you move forward, we have to say that with the hard work that the commission has put forward, we're quite pleased with the direction that we're going at this point, and really feel that our state can be represented well. The other districts, as it relates to the Minority Commission, I know there have been concerns that have been brought forward, and certainly I'm sure the commission is taking a look at those areas and to make sure to be able to increase some of the minority representation in those districts for the Minority Coalition, and I certainly would strongly agree with that as well. So I know they've submitted in their concerns, and we're going to continue to be here as long as you guys come forward for our various communities. We certainly appreciate being able to at least give what our concerns and what our opinions are in the place that we live. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Next speaker is Joseph Murphy.
Good evening. Joseph Murphy, M-U-R-P-H-Y. Joseph, like it sounds. I'm currently in Congressional District 4, apparently moving to 9, which I guess we've got some voter registration to do. And then I'm in the pancake 24, kind of squash pancake. It's interesting. My political life, I'm chair for Democracy for America from Maricopa County. Some of you have probably heard of us. Some of you probably don't like us. Too bad. We try to help people learning how to run in elections, to get elected, and working with issues. And the issue that I see most in front of us right now is the corporate Republican Party will never be satisfied with 80% safe seats in the legislature. 7 out of 9 congressional seats being safe for them. We all knew that there would be lawsuits if they didn't get what they wanted, and that's going to happen anyway. But now they have their friends at the corporate legislature also weighing in. We also have the lobbyist group Fair Trust, which incorporated as a non-lobbying group to hide their clients' identities from Arizonans. And they would have been forced to actually admit being lobbyists, except this is Arizona. Unfortunately, we run in a state run by people who have a banana republic ideology. I also happen to be working with the Occupy group in downtown Phoenix, helping with outreach. The Occupy movement exists today because of the kind of banana republic actions that are being pursued by the Arizona Republican Party and their Chamber of Commerce allies. These kids are angry. We got the ACLU to help us set up, or a former member of the ACLU to help us set up legal observers for their marches in downtown to keep everybody safer. When people from the border militia group showed up with their guns, the kids said, take them to the mic. They were afraid to go to the mic because they were armed, we weren't. So they didn't go to the mic. But the kids down there have no problems with people with guns. One of the police officers asked if we should remove them, if they should remove them, and I said no, and they pointed out, well, but they have guns, and I said, you do too, and they got confused over that too. But the Occupy kids are brave, and they're registering to vote, which is really nice. Our Banana Republic legislature abhors fair election competition, just like they abhor fair taxation and they abhor fair trade policies. Your work can give Arizona's fair and competitive elections at least. So please ignore the Banana Republic Arizona legislature and help our state become a democracy again. I believe that the people of the state of Arizona are behind you, even though the Banana Republicans aren't. And thank you for your work.
Our next speaker is Elaine, and I hope I pronounced it correctly, Espericueta, and please spell your last name.
It's going to take me longer to spell my name than it will be to say what I have to say tonight. Elaine Espericueta, E-S-P like in Paul, E-R-I-C-U-E-T-A. And I'm representing myself, and I'm from Levine. And the only reason I signed up to speak tonight was that I was afraid that you would be getting so many ugly comments, and I just wanted to offer my support. I think I could probably sit down and work things out a little differently than what you have in your maps, but I think this is the fairest look at maps that I've seen in many years, and I've been in this state since 1969. So I just wanted to express my gratitude for the hard work that you do and for the fact that you're standing up against so much ugly pressure. And I just felt like I needed to say thank you. So that's all. Thank you.
This is our last speaker. And again, if anybody in the audience would like to speak, you need to fill out one of these yellow forms. Our last speaker, Tanya Norwood, the Executive Director of the Consumers Council.
Good evening. My name is Tanya, T-O-N-Y-A, last name Norwood, N-O-R-W-O-O-D. And I'm doing all I can right now to contain myself. I just left the Capitol and I witnessed one of the most horrendous misuse of time and government money that I can have ever seen in my 42 years here on this earth. I am not only appalled, but I am angry that this was allowed to happen. It is against the Constitution. It is also against Prop 106, where we voted to remove this type of thing from happening. I will not go into that. I will come back at another hearing. I know I only have 4 minutes, but on behalf of the Arizona Consumers Council,
Consumers Council.
We have a resolution, and we hope that the Department of Justice steps in to take really good aim at what's going on and defend Commissioner Mathis and what she stands for. Whereas November 2000, Arizona voters passed Proposition 106, a citizens' initiative that amended the Arizona Constitution by removing the power to draw congressional and state legislative districts from the state legislature and reassign the task to the newly created Independent Redistricting Commission, otherwise known as the AIRC. Whereas the Arizona Constitution, the sole task of the IRC is to establish congressional and legislative districts. The Constitution permits no more than 2 members of the IRC to be from the same political party and require the 5th commissioner not to be registered with any party represented on the IRC at the appointed time. Candidates must demonstrate a commitment to performing the IRC's charge in an honest, independent, impartial fashion, and to uphold public confidence and in the integrity of the redistricting process, which we believe Commissioner Mathis has done. Whereas the state of Arizona falls under the Voting Rights Act of 1964, which is a landmark civil rights legislation that protects the rights of minority voters to participate in the electoral process. It was enacted, once again, in 1965, the amended and extended in subsequent years. The Act, 2 majority provisions that concern redistricting are sections 2 and 5. And I invite you commissioners to be aware of such language and requirements, but I will not go into them. Now, therefore, be it resolved, we align ourselves with the maps that honor the minority-majority landscapes and maintain equal voting representation. Be it resolved that we affirm the autonomous rights and responsibilities of the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission. Also, be it resolved that we support the Arizona's Independent Redistricting Commission transparent implementation of the will of the Arizona voters outlined in Proposition 106 that took place in the year 2000. Be it further resolved that we assert faith and trust in the character and integrity of those chosen commissioners assigned to fulfill the charge of the redistricting process. This resolution will be signed and delivered, hand-delivered, on Saturday, an additional redistricting hearing. I'd just like to say thank you. You do have support, and as this continues, you will definitely have people behind you. So please carry on and pass that on to the other commissioners.
Yes, ma'am. I'd ask you to submit the document in public record, but I would have to confiscate your laptop.
We may need to talk sideline on that, but I will make sure that this is in your hands.
Please.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I guess we have one more. We have Mr. Randall Holmes representing himself. And again, I think you just walked in. You have 4 minutes.
Thank you, members of the commission.
Oh.
It seems to be fewer and fewer of you. I'm glad we have one of you that shows up, and one of my favorites also. The gloves are off. No more Mr. Nice Guy. There is no reason to appease a bully. The only way to treat a bully is to give him a bloody nose, as soon-to-be former Senate President Pierce is going to find out in a couple weeks. And this is war. You're either with the Vichy or you're with the Free French. As the famous Jim Hightower often says, the only thing in the middle of the road is a white line and the occasional dead armadillo. The junta of theocrats and kleptocrats, which have gained control of our state government by hook or by crook, mostly by crook, have overstepped their authority. They've taken off their masks. And as we've seen, at least in the Arizona Senate, there are no moderates. There are no moderate Republicans. And anybody that claims that mask is fooling themselves or trying to fool their constituents. They don't want their constituents to choose them. They want to choose their constituents. And this is why we, the voters of Arizona, established this commission. It's been under attack. And I'm told that 1/3 of Arizona voters are independents. But I'm sorry, I don't believe that. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as an independent. There's only 2 teams can play football at one time. You can't have 3 teams. And if you're trying to be in the middle of the field, not taking sides, you're going to get run over. And as my favorite president once said, you're either with us or you're with the terrorists. Please don't let the terrorists win. And I use that term advisedly. People that try to scare people into altering their political behavior is the dictionary definition of a terrorist. I wish Chairwoman Mathis were here. I understand why she isn't, but that's the same thing I'd say to her. I hope this is going to go to court, and I hope we spend a good long time in court until after the 2012 election, if necessary. But the last thing I want to say to you is that there is no reason to try to appease the bullies now. You can draw 4 or 5 competitive congressional districts, I'm told by experts in the field, and I'm sure you can draw a whole lot more competitive legislative districts. The only way the people of Arizona are going to get peacefully out from under the rule of this junta is if we have competitive districts and we have a chance to change a lot of faces in the legislature. Thanks for your time.
Yes, sir. That was our last speaker of the evening. So again, I want to thank you guys for being here and spending the time with us. And I also want to thank the staff. You know, without their hard work, and I think Christina Gomez is in the back. She put together all these public hearings. So I'd like to thank her and the staff for doing this. And again, tomorrow we'll be in Cottonwood and also in Peoria. On the 3rd, we will be in Scottsdale. And let's see, on the 4th, we'll be at the Tohono Nation, and followed by Marana at 6 p.m., Green Valley on the 5th, and Casa Grande on the 5th. So again, we'll be plenty of opportunities for you guys to speak to the commission. You guys can travel with us, not in the same car, but travel with us. So thanks again, and have a good night. 7:19 is the end of the meeting. Thank you for reminding me.